The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Geopolitics with Ghost. I'm your host, the Ghost of Base Patrick Henry, Gordon McCormick, Ghost of Base Patrick Henry. That was weird. Huh. StreamYard's updated. There's now sound effects. So I was turning down the volume of the sound effects. Very strange. All right. Geopolitics with Ghosts. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, the Ghost of Base Patrick Henry. This is Badlands Media, April 14th, 2026. And yeah, it's been a few weeks, I feel like, of just weird scheduling stuff. So we're finally back. And I don't think we're muted. I don't think we got technical issues, but it's early in the day, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. Share the show, give us a like. And subscribe to the channel if you're new here. But we're going to jump into some of the geopolitical storylines. I've had the benefit of doing Badlands Daily for the past 2 days, so was able to get through some stuff, not as much as I thought we would, because both days we were like, yeah, there's way more stuff geopolitically than domestically, but then we ended up speaking at length of the domestic things. Just got to check on the chat. Got to make sure that everyone is behaving themselves. Looks like they are so far. Okay, so let's get back to Iran, because on the other shows we were looking at some of the other storylines around the world. I don't normally really get into like the milieu of the the actuals, like the details of what is claimed to be happening on the ground, but there is a unique situation here, I think, given this Chinese tanker, because of all the eyeballs that are on the Strait of Hormuz and like all the OSINT data that's out there, and the fact that there's this one Chinese tanker that was trying to get through, and there's conflicting reports of it getting through and it not getting through. And we don't have definitive answers on anything, but to help understand what the baseline claim is, I wanted to turn to Bannon, because he had Captain James Fennell on to explain it, and he was showing maps. And anytime somebody shows a map, they're going to win my heart. So, yeah, they're going to use maps to kind of explain this. And that may help us get a better understanding of at least the storyline that we're being told. Whether or not the actuals are happening, we will tend to withhold belief more times than not. But the story is always important, because there's different parties that are trying to influence us in different ways and make us think certain things. So that said, let me pull this up. All right, and the audio should be good, but let's just let this roll for a few minutes.
I had said that the USS George W. Bush was heading into the Strait of Gibraltar. Hours after that report that had been online was corrected, and now that we know that the Bush is actually heading down through the west coast of Africa, is off of Namibia and is heading around the Cape of Good Hope and avoiding the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb. Regarding this Chinese owned ship, it's called the Rich Starry, and it's Malawi flagged. It's under OFAC sanctions for illegal shipments, and it was sitting at an anchorage in Oman inside the Arabian Gulf. It had been at anchorage. It's an oil and chemical tanker fully laden. And when the embargo or the blockade started yesterday at 10 Eastern time on the 13th of April, within the hour, the Rich Starry started moving towards the Iranian troll booth, if you will. And she got about halfway there from her anchorage and turned around and stopped and then turned around and went back. Then several hours later, she started going through the strait. And as you can see from the graphic, she actually went through the Strait of Hormuz just south of Larak Island. And everybody on the internet, when that happened 6-8 hours ago.
Hang on, slow down. Let's get the graphic up. Denver, you put the graphic up. I want the captain to explain it. Go ahead. Once we get the okay, there we go. Captain Fennell,
so
continue on
right
and
corner,
tell the audience where to focus.
Yeah, focus on the top right quadrant, and what you'll see is a yellow track going south of Keshem and south of Larak Island, and then that yellow track goes down through the Strait of Hormuz. And before it got to that red box, the internet exploded and said, see, the blockades failed. Well, now, in the last 4 or 5 hours, the Rich Starry went to that red box and then stopped and has turned around and gone back on that red track and is headed back up towards and is now south of Larak Island, Keshem Island. So that's just one vessel that's been clearly turned around. There's another report of another 1 or 2 vessels that have been turned around. So we're in this fog of war right now in terms of, what exactly is happening. But there is evidence that the U.S. Navy's blockade has, in effect, been effective and is starting to turn around sanctioned ships. Now, this ship did not come out of an Iranian port. It came out of the UAE, which is on that southern peninsula there inside the Gulf at an anchorage. So there are other ships that are coming out. There's some reports that some ships that were in Iranian ports have gone through. That's not been confirmed yet. So I would guess that in the first hours of this, there's going to be some leakers and things of that nature. But the U.S. Navy looks and appears to be putting this embargo or blockade in place and doing exactly what President Trump said he was going to do. And this ship was headed for China. It's Chinese-owned, Malawi flag, Chinese-owned, and was heading for China, and that has been turned around. So that's a tanker of oil that the Chinese will not get.
How does this explain to the audience? How does this work? If I think, at least what I've seen, I don't know what the notice to mariners is, but what I've seen from CENTCOMs, that they are basically putting the Iranian ports, Karg Island, anything that's Iranian, and they're tracking. If it comes out, it's going to get turned back. But supposedly our allies, the Saudis, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and in fact, I think people were very excited that one of the liquefied natural gas vessels got out. How does something leave UAE, even if it's part of this gray fleet or ghost fleet, that gets turned around? Obviously, it's CCP oil. I mean, you want it turned around. I want it turned around, but we're anti-CCP guys. Is that in the rules of the game? I thought if it came out of UAE, if it came out of one of our allies' ports, it's good to go. Have they taken a second consideration that if it's gray shipped or they think it's going to go to China, it gets turned around?
Well, it wasn't because it was going to China. It was because it was already an OFAC internationally sanctioned vessel for what it had already done, running illegally obtained oil. So coming out of Iran. So presumably that ship at some point, I don't know its full history, had received Iranian oil. So that's why it's under sanction. Maybe it's under sanction because it ran Russian oil sometime earlier. I don't know all the details. But the fact is that it was an OFAC sanctioned vessel, and that is part of the criteria that we're going to stop. So we're going to stop every ship vessel that comes out of Iranian waters, Iranian ports. They have 6 main ports that provide or supply 90% of Iran's economy and trade. So those will be the 6 that will be watched the most. And then we'll be watching for sanctioned vessels. And then we've even said in the notice to mariners, we've even said neutral countries that we think may have some suspicious activities, we have the right to reserve to look at those, and we will do that as well. So this is going to be a fairly thorough effort to make sure that Iran cannot run oil out, buy and sell oil, and as well as we don't want to see weapons coming in. We don't want to see ballistic missile parts or components for nuclear material or whatever it is. We don't want that coming into Iran either. So.
Okay, so I think that's a good place to park it. So you kind of got the gist, the general gist. I'm pulling up the Rich Starry is the name of the ship in question, and this should all make a little more sense once we start to get into the analysis. Because again, I don't know if these ships are getting turned around or not. We don't know what's happening. I suspect to some degree this drama is unfolding. But, trying to identify exactly where is the vapor, the moisture barrier, so to speak. When you have in construction, when you have insulation on an exterior wall, there's a point where the moisture barrier happens, like the dew point between the air outside and the air inside. And the idea is to capture that on a surface where it can safely evaporate without creating mold, right? So we want to figure out where the moisture barrier is, knowing we're not going to be able to nail it down exactly. But where's the moisture barrier of lies here? Lies meaning, deception, which planned deception. Because I think if we can start to pinpoint that, that's really where we can try to back out into understanding who the players are and what their motives are, and maybe who's trying to achieve what. Okay, so ChatGPT, I asked why the Rich Starry was sanctioned. It says the tanker Rich Starry was reportedly sanctioned because of its links to transporting Iranian oil in violation of U.S. sanctions. Key reason for the sanction: the ship was identified. Here, I'll pull this up on screen. Where did it go? That way I can keep an eye on you wild animals in the chat. Okay, so the ship was identified as part of a network involved in moving Iranian crude oil to buyers, often in Asia, especially China. Despite restrictions, these shipments typically bypass sanctions through practices like ship-to-ship transfers at sea, disabling tracking systems, using shell companies, or reflagging vessels. Why that triggers sanctions. The U.S. enforces sanctions on Iran's oil sector to limit revenue tied to, nuclear program and regional military activities. What that means for a ship like Rich Starry: once sanctioned, it can be denied access to ports and insurance. Companies that deal with it risk secondary sanctions, and it becomes much harder for the vessel to legally operate in global shipping markets. Public reporting so far suggests the sanction isn't necessarily about a single voyage, but rather patterned involvement in a broader shadow fleet. Okay. All right. So the reason why that is significant is because, as the captain pointed out, the ship was leaving, at least based on satellite data, a UAE port, or Bannon pointed that out. Why was the Rich Starry leaving a UAE port with Iranian oil? The short answer is, this is according to ChatGPT, it likely wasn't officially quote unquote Iranian oil anymore on paper, even if it originated in Iran. Oh, okay. Let's see. This is where it gets a little interesting. There's some nuance here. Says how Iranian oil ends up in UAE ports. Ship-to-ship transfers at sea. Tankers carrying Iranian crude often transfer cargo to another vessel. Storage and this breaks a traceable link to Iran. 2, storage and relabeling and hubs like Fujairah. The port of Fujairah is a major deep water port located on the eastern coast of the UAE. All right. There it's stored in tanks, blended in with other crude and relabeled as a different origin. At that point, the documentation may list it as something like Omani blend or mixed origin crude, and then re-export under a different identity. So the Rich Starry was flagged based on its pattern of movements, not necessarily tied to whatever it was bringing out of the UAE. But that's an important little nuance that we're getting in the narrative there, that Iranian oil is taken to places like the UAE and then purportedly mixed. All right. So what's, first of all, later in the interview, I'm not going to play the full interview because we played enough of it, but later in the interview, the captain gets into the details of NATO and the NATO navies and how the NATO navies are failing. And one of the things that blew my mind is he said that the British aircraft carrier is moving around without any escorts. It has no surface ships escorting it, destroyers or anything, which, like, whenever we move a carrier, it has a whole fleet surrounding it to protect it. So he was saying that these European navies are just completely inadequate to even protect their own ships, let alone serve as part of a blockade. And that's part of the reason why they're reluctant to get involved. That, assuming all that's true and all the things that he outlined later in the interview are true, this really demonstrates the vulnerability of Europe. Like, Europe is an extremely vulnerable, in an extremely vulnerable place, because if you realize and understand the history of empire in the modern, when I say modern, I mean the last 500 years, the way it's gone is Portugal was first, the 1400s, right? Portugal became the first dominant naval empire. And then quickly became the Spanish Empire because of the Treaty of Tordesillas, which the Pope in 1492 divided. He drew a line straight down the map, and he said everything on this side of the map belongs to Spain, everything on this side of the map belongs to Portugal, and that's because Portugal and Spain made up the Catholic base, the support base of the Vatican outside of Italy, and the Pope didn't want them going to war over this discovered land in the New World. And of course, that line ended up running right through the Amazon. So all of South America and Central America went to Spain, and Brazil went to Portugal. And then that led to Spain discovering all this silver in Peru and all this gold in Mexico. And that's what made the Spanish Empire, and then led to the age of piracy, etc. So after Spain in the 1500s, 1600s, you get, the Netherlands are involved. Like, they have a little bit of naval supremacy, but it really transfers to England, to Britain. Britain then becomes the next empire, along with France. France certainly had its, it was there, but I don't know if France ever really had a true naval supremacy, but they certainly had a presence navally, and they definitely built a land-based empire, a land-based army with Napoleon in the 1800s. But after the 1800s, after France does that, Germany then rises up and they create their land-based empire, first with the First Reich, and then following World War I, you get the collapse of that into the Second Reich, which is the Weimar Republic, and then that lasts 10 years, and then that becomes the Third Reich in 1933. And then from there, you get the American Empire in 1945, and that's where we are now. We are still living under the American Empire, so to speak, that epoch. So the reason I say all that is because if you go back, we can bicker over, which nation was number one at which time, but over the past really 600 years, it's always been a European power. It was Portugal, Spain, France, England, the Netherlands. Germany certainly had a good navy during World War I and World War II. And now it appears that Europe is incapable of defending itself, both on land and by sea. They can't even protect their own trade routes, and that basically makes them just a junior partner in any relationship they're going to have. It also makes them not a sovereign power. What is the definition of sovereignty? What makes a nation sovereign? And in my opinion, a sovereign nation is a nation that can act in any way it chooses without consequence, so to speak. The ability to say no, the ability to say no to a request from a foreign power. A foreign power says, we want you to do this, and you look them in the eye and say, no, we're not going to do that, knowing that chances are they're not going to come after you for that. They may try, but when you're a junior partner, when you're one of these less sovereign places, a third world country, so for example, an empire can roll in and just take over. Like, they can conquer you because they have a greater military presence. And so then when that happens, these conquered nations, so to speak, conquered cities, what have you, have to then choose, do I negotiate with the army outside the gates, or do I try to fight them and prepare to be besieged? And the smart ones, the ones that survive, end up negotiating. And that we see that happening. That happened in Russia, in Ukraine, in the 800 years ago when the Golden Horde came down. They negotiated with the Mongols as opposed to fighting them. Moscow did, at least. So Moscow chose to negotiate with the Mongols, right, when the Mongols came riding down from Asia. And they bypassed Moscow, which was not the significant power in Russia at the time. The two significant powers were Novgorod and Kiev, which were west of Moscow. And Novgorod and Kiev both decided to fight. And because of that, they were both annihilated. It took Kiev hundreds of years to rebuild. But that is why Moscow became the capital of Russia, because that was, proto-Russia, so to speak. And so by the time the concept of real nation states and empire came about, Moscow was the supreme power in the Rus area, like the Rus people. So now we are in the American empire, and we are seeing a clear exercise, narratively or actually, of this dynamic, right? Of the empire is at the door. The American empire is at the door of Iran, and it is making demands of Iran. And Iran can choose to negotiate with it, or it can choose to hunker down, dig in, and fight. And ostensibly, what is happening here is it is just choosing the latter option, to fight, not to negotiate, while simultaneously engaging in negotiations. And that's where it gets really murky. That's where it gets super murky, because the optics of what is happening with these negotiations, not only the negotiations, but just the public communications. And that's where social media really creates this fog of war. And even Captain Fresnel pointed out, there's so much fog of war here. We don't even know what's actually happening. As he's sitting there trying to explain what the satellite imagery is demonstrating, we don't really know what's happening. And then meanwhile, you have these posts being made online of these Iranian embassies. Let me see if I can find some of them that are making, like, they're shit posting. These Iranian embassies are shit posting all over the place. Here's the Iranian embassy in South Africa. This account has been one of the best of all of them in terms of their quality of shit posting.
In my head just looked out. Please let the ships go through.
So let's see, the embassy of Iran in Bulgaria. So here's Bulgaria saying, no, that one's actually trying. Okay, here it is. Embassy in Thailand. This is from yesterday. Are you folks ready? Trump 2028, but it's $20.28 per gallon. Let's see. We have Iran embassy, South Africa. This one is from 11 days ago, but the regime change happened successfully, MAGA, and it's showing a picture of the Pentagon, of the Joint Chiefs, and they're actually the ones who are being fired and replaced. And that's true. Like, did the regime change happen in Iran, or did the regime change happen at the Pentagon? So it's just stuff like that. Like, if you were actually earnestly engaged in warfare and or diplomacy with an empire that is at the door, that is threatening to destroy you, and according to the narrative is destroying you, that's what we're being told, why would you then turn around and then shitpost online and try to provoke that empire into going further, right? And that's where a lot of the that's where a lot of my analysis, like I've spent time looking at that and considering it, because it just doesn't make sense. Nobody else can make sense of what's happening. None of these other countries, Europe can't make sense of it. It seems like a lot of the countries in the Middle East can't make sense of it. Even Russia and China, though I think those two are probably some of the most read in on what's going on. Even they're kind of putting out some confusing rhetoric and opinions on it. And yet, the two countries that seem to understand the most, and I should say that seem to be in agreement as to what's happening the most, are the United States and Iran. Even Israel seems to be kind of like playing catch up. Like they're always kind of playing catch up based on what Trump puts out, right? It's like Trump says something, Israel denies it, other countries deny it, and then Iran's like, oh no, actually Trump's telling the truth, but they'll tell it from a different perspective. Like, they'll cast Trump as the villain in the story. So it's like Trump says something, Iran acknowledges it. Iran says something, Trump acknowledges it, but everyone else is confused and unclear or unsure whether what these two parties are saying are actually happening, if that makes sense. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with, let's go to TASS. So TASS, this is Russian news. Okay, this is the closest thing that you're going to find to state media in Russia. This is like these guys are pretty much embedded with Putin. And when they put out articles, they're very brief. It's kind of like just the facts, ma'am, right? They don't do a lot of analysis. I mean, they'll put out some analysis, but it's very clear that it's analysis, right? And so what you tend to read in TASS is like coming straight from the Kremlin, as I understand it, at least, or at least approved by them. It says, in brief, what we know about the situation around U.S. blockade of Hormuz Strait. Baghdad today reported that Iran had anticipated a U.S. blockade of its ports and therefore moved dozens of oil-laden tankers out to sea in advance. The Rich Starry, a Chinese-linked tanker flying the flag of Malawi, that has been under U.S. sanctions since 2003, passed through the Strait of Hormuz on Tuesday after the U.S. imposed a naval blockade on Iran, CNN reported, citing shipping data. TASS has compiled key details about the situation. It says first tankers crossing the strait. At least one vessel sailing under the flag of Iran has departed from the Gulf of Oman for the Arabian Sea since the United States imposed its blockade. According to an analysis from TASS, based on data from maritime monitoring systems, at 12:01 or 12:10 a.m. Moscow time on Tuesday, which would be 9 p.m. GMT on Monday, the container ship Shabdis, currently sailing under the flag of Iran from the Iranian port of Chabahar, entered the Arabian Sea. I'm not going to read through all this. This is a lot of details here, but I'm just trying to see what their opinion is of the Rich Starry. Where do they think the Rich Starry landed? Okay, so it says the tanker Rich Starry also transited the Strait of Hormuz after the United States imposed a naval blockade of Iran, CNN reported, citing maritime or marine traffic data. Okay, so the vessel owned by Full Star Shipping has been under U.S. sanctions for ties with Iran since 2023 and is flying the flag of Malawi. The vessel passed through the Strait of Hormuz on Tuesday morning, CNN said. The tanker attempted to leave the Persian Gulf on Monday before reversing its course near Kashim Island. The vessel bound for China is carrying methanol, according to CNN. So again, like conflicting reports, because Iran is claiming that it got through. CNN is claiming it got through. I mean, you can't believe CNN. It's fake news CNN. But other sources are claiming that it didn't make it through. So that's very, very strange. I want to go to I want to go to the Maloney meeting that Trump had today. But before we do, I want to look at the fact that we are about to get a new round of talks, right? Where's the round of talks? Well, first, I guess we can play this video that I had pulled up. This might make sense. Okay, so there's a video that RT put out. I wonder if we can get, yeah, here it is. And the headline is "Uncertainty is Killing Us, Captain of a Ship Stranded in the Persian Gulf." So let's play the clip and then we'll see. I don't know if there's any sound. There's no sound in the clip. So it's just a guy just panning around and he's just showing you, look at all these tankers. And again, this could be AI generated, but we'll just accept the narrative for what it is at this point. And it says, all this time, the crew has been awaiting notification from the company that operates the vessel as to when to move out from here and where to move out, he explained. The uncertainty is really killing all of us, the captain said, adding that the crew is feeling helpless. Now, the part that I wanted to pull up was that there is a new round of talks. Yeah, here it is. That are planned. And Trump has said that. Trump has said, oh, yeah, like we're going to meet maybe as soon as Thursday. We're going to meet again with Iran. And so here's TASS. It says, in brief, what is known about preparations for the new round of Iran-U.S. talks? According to the Wall Street Journal, despite publicly sharp rhetoric, the U.S. and Iran are ready to engage in talks on the condition that both sides show flexibility. So what is being reported from the last talks, and remember the timeline just really quickly, is that Trump came out and said, praise be to Allah on Easter. The next day he said, I may obliterate a civilization. He then a few minutes later said, I may make peace with them. The next day, that would be last Tuesday, he negotiated a ceasefire, a 2-week ceasefire that we're still living under. I guess it's supposed to go till next Tuesday. And then that queued up talks in Islamabad, Pakistan, that happened this past weekend. Trump sends J.D. Vance, Jared Kushner, and Steve Witkoff to Islamabad, and they come back empty-handed after very long negotiations, we're told. And the crux of, as I understand it, of what happened in the negotiations is that the U.S. demand was for a 20-year pause on any uranium enrichment by Iran, meaning for 20 years they can't enrich anything. Iran rejected that and then countered with a 5-year pause, demonstrating that maybe they have a little bit of flexibility, but they're not going to stop enriching uranium for the next 2 decades. Frankly, I don't blame them. That would really set them back in terms of geopolitical advantage. So now that failed, Trump came out, I think on Sunday, and said, all right, now that it's failed, I'm going to impose a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz that will go into effect tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And I believe it started at 10 o'clock yesterday, right? That's when the blockade began. And now we're still living under this blockade. But again, conflicting reports on what, and so here it is right here. U.S.-Iran talks may resume in a couple of days. This is from this morning. It says negotiations between Iran and the United States may resume in Islamabad within a couple of days. U.S. President Donald Trump said, quote, you should stay there really because something could be happening over the next 2 days. And we're more inclined to go there, he told the New York Post, referring to Islamabad and potential new contacts between Washington and Tehran. Iran and the U.S. held several rounds of talks in the Pakistani capital on April 11th. And then it just goes into the short history that I just gave you. And so what the Kremlin's now saying about this is negotiation timeline. The new round of talks between the U.S. and Iran expected to take place in Islamabad may occur this week or at the beginning of next week, Reuters reported, citing a spokesperson for the Iranian embassy in Pakistan. The next round of direct talks between Iran and the U.S. will be held in the near future. Pakistani Defense Minister Khawaja Mohammad Asif said, and remember, Asif is the guy who a year ago, came out and publicly said that ISIS was a creation of, Islamic Jihad was a creation of Western intelligence agencies. Remember, he came out and disclosed that in an interview with RT. The dates of the new round of U.S.-Iran talks have not yet been set. Al Jazeera reported, citing a source in the Pakistani Foreign Ministry. According to the Associated Press, the date and venue of the new meeting between Iranian and U.S. representatives have not yet been set, though the next round of talks could potentially take place on Thursday. Internal discussions on potential second face-to-face meetings ahead of the expiration date of the ceasefire between Iran and Washington are ongoing in the U.S. administration, CNN reported the venue options. Al Jazeera said, citing a source in the Pakistani foreign ministry, that Islamabad had offered to host the second round of talks. The next round of talks could be held in Geneva or Islamabad. And then you just got the comment from Trump that said, stay in Islamabad. It's probably going to be in Islamabad. Let's see. Turkey and Egypt could also host another round of Iran-U.S. negotiations on conflict settlement, Bloomberg reported. And according to the news agency, Turkish and Egyptian officials have undertaken diplomatic efforts to support the settlement process, increasing the likelihood that talks could take place in one of these countries. Okay, so let's see outcome of the previous meeting. So I mentioned the 20-year, 5-year thing. Let's see. They failed to come to an agreement. The Iranian judiciary chief, Mohseni Ejai, said that the U.S. had failed due to excessive demands. The Iranian ambassador to India, Mohammad Fathali, did not rule out a possibility of second talks. Okay. I'm just trying to skip through some of the stuff that we've already covered. It says during the Islamabad talks with the U.S., Iran proposed suspending nuclear enrichment for up to 5 years. So there you go. So according to the newspaper, Tehran voiced a similar proposal at the Geneva talks in February, after which U.S. President Donald Trump ordered the start of an operation against Iran. And so the key detail there is that Iran was showing flexibility at the meeting in Geneva. And if you remember, we talked about this on this show. This is where Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were meeting in the room with the Iranian officials. And then I believe Oman was there and Britain was there as well. And later, like after they walk out of there, everyone says, oh yeah, this looks pretty positive. Like we think this actually looks like we're going to get a deal done. The only person who's like, this is bad. The talks didn't go well. We're not happy was Trump. Iran walked out of there and said, yeah, this is like, we actually are pretty optimistic about this. And then Trump comes out and says, nope, didn't work out. Prepare for war. And then a day or two later, the war begins. And then weeks later, maybe like a week later, the British delegation that was there gave an interview to, I think it was the Financial Times of London, where they said that they were caught off guard that the U.S. didn't send a team of experts with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, like people who are very, very read in and well researched on Iran and just the whole situation. They understand all the little caveats and details so that they can in real time negotiate, help Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner negotiate. So then, according to this guy, his team stepped in because he brought his own experts and they helped with those details. To me, that kind of suggests that the deal was already done. Like there was already something in place. These other people at the meeting weren't aware of that. And therefore, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff don't need the experts because they're not actually negotiating anything. It's all performative, I think. But what the British official said is he said, I'm surprised this war is even happening because it was Iran who came out and made an offer that surprised even us, even the British, because we'd never expected them to offer that. Now, he didn't specify what that offer was, but now we're hearing that that offer was delaying enrichment, like pausing on enrichment for 5 years. We haven't heard Iran make that offer before. Okay, so all of these little data points are starting to kind of paint this picture, this narrative. Now, again, this could just be narrative, but this is the narrative that it seems to be emerging, is that Iran was showing flexibility. They were doing this in front of Britain, right? And now Britain is confused because they're saying, why are we at war now? I don't understand why we're at war. Meanwhile, Trump is saying, hey, Britain, you better send your ships over here and help us fight these guys because these guys are, otherwise they're going to cut off your energy and you're not going to get any energy out of the Strait of Hormuz. And Britain's response is, we don't have any ships available because the only aircraft carrier we have is driving around it's sailing around unguarded. Like we don't have any escorts, so we can't even escort our own carrier, let alone send you ships, surface ships, destroyers or whatever, to help with the blockade. And I think I saw Trump made a specific statement about this. Let me see. He said that the EU's energy situation has them basically pinned up against the wall, and they've done this to themselves, and that this is their own doing. And, they kind of have to fight their way out of this paper bag, so to speak. Let's see. Okay, so here's the Spanish prime minister. This guy has Sanchez. This guy has been a thorn in Trump's side. But again, I wonder sometimes about some of this, because he's been the one who's been anti-Israel, right? Spain has been anti war in Gaza, anti war in Lebanon. And here he is saying, maybe I'll face threats for speaking out against Trump. Let him be bothered. Spain is free. We'll build strong ties with China. And so Spain is kind of breaking away from the rest of the EU. Trump is pressuring the EU to punish Spain, right? To use the mechanisms in the EU bylaws to punish Spain for stepping out. But the way I see this is that these different countries are now acting in their own self-interest rather than becoming complicit to the EU and doing whatever the EU tells them to do. We saw Hungary, Viktor Orban was vetoing the $90 billion loan that they wanted to send to Ukraine to continue to finance the war. And Viktor Orban said, no, we're not doing that. We're not going to finance that. And then suddenly he loses an election over the weekend and is purportedly out. And this new guy, Peter Magyar, who it sounds like he is agreeable to that loan, is now coming in. So you can see all these little fracture lines forming all around the EU, but also NATO, because as Trump tries to force NATO into a situation that it physically can't perform, it can't fight, it can't go send ships to the blockade. It also, these individual countries, nation states, don't see their interests aligned with the rest of the EU. Hungary, it's very close to Ukraine in Russia. It doesn't want the war to continue. So its interest is to see the war stop immediately. Spain it does not have loyalty to Israel. I would imagine very large Catholic population that probably has a lot to do with it. They're not Zionists. They don't tend to be Zionists. So they don't have this loyalty to Israel that you find in the United States and other parts of the West. So they're breaking from that. And they're saying, hey, we actually think that the Muslims here are the party that we empathize with. And this is all, I think, breaking up the EU and NATO. But I think it's only effective if they do it on their own, if this all happens naturally as part of a game theory model, right? So we're going to get to Maloney, but this takes us to the Israel-Lebanon talks. So today it says Israel-Lebanon talks in Washington wrap up after 2 hours. Says the meeting between the Israeli and Lebanese ambassadors to Washington has wrapped up after roughly 2 hours at the State Department. The U.S. brokered the direct talks between Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Yashil Leiter and Lebanese ambassador to the U.S. Nada Hamada or Hamadeh. No date for a follow-up meeting has been set. A State Department official says today's meeting has been planned for a month before last weekend's Iran talks were held in Islamabad. As the president has made clear, this is a quote, there is no link between the negotiations between the United States and Iran in Islamabad and the Israel-Lebanon talks, the State Department official says. Quote, Iran dragged the Lebanese people into a war, so it cannot pretend to be Lebanon's protector, the official continues. Hezbollah is a terrorist organization that does not deserve a place. It must be fully disarmed, and the United States supports that goal. Iran will not be allowed to dictate the future of Lebanon anymore. These talks are part of that effort. Separately, the State Department official notes that Washington recently approved a $58.8 million in new humanitarian programs to help provide life-saving assistance to over 1 million Lebanese civilians who have been displaced by the outgoing war. I'm getting a call. I don't know who that is, but sometimes people call me in the middle of the show and they say, hey, man, you're muted. I got to make sure that's not what it is. Okay, so the whole Lebanon thing. Hezbollah is defending Southern Lebanon from the IDF, who have made it very clear that they're going to annex Southern Lebanon and make it part of Israel. Let's go to the White House. This is the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Speaking. This was published at 2:08. So I think this is after their meeting concluded.
When will you stop fighting in Lebanon? When will you stop firing missiles at the Lebanese civilian infrastructure? I guess that's their question.
I want to push back on your question. Okay. Israelis don't wake up in the morning and look to fire missiles across the border. The missiles are being fired at our civilians. That will be put a stop to. We will not allow a terror organization to continually fire missiles into our population centers. That has to be understood by anybody asking such a question. The Lebanese understand that. I hope the media will as well.
Do you think they're going to understand when will you stop fighting in Lebanon?
Yeah, so there's a lot of like consternation now. I've seen it really from both sides, but toward the Lebanese government, because the Lebanese government has not intervened really in what's happening on either side. They're kind of letting it play out. They are vocally supporting the Lebanese people and saying that the fact that Lebanese people are being pushed out of their land is wrong, but it's really, as I understand it, Hezbollah that's fighting the IDF, and in effect, they are Hezbollah is defending these Christian villages. We'll get into that in a second. But I was trying to see if I could find this article that I had seen while we were at GART, because while we were at GART, I think it was Thursday or Friday, first you had Bezalel Smotrich come out, and Smotrich said, yeah, Southern Lebanon is going to be ours to take, as well as Southern Syria, as well as the West Bank. I think this is it right here. This looks like it's dated from further back, but Smotrich says Litani River should be Israel's new border with Lebanon. There you go. So Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich compares waterway 20 miles into southern Lebanon to the so-called Yellow Line in Gaza, IDF-held buffer zone in Syria, amid continued Hezbollah fire. So that would expand the borders of Israel, not only in Lebanon, but also in Syria. And then I think he also, in this statement, said that the West Bank would be included in that. Not Gaza, because that's protected right now so far by the border peace, right? But West Bank, that's fair game. And then you had Israel Katz, who's the defense minister. He used to be the chief of diplomat. Katz came out, and I think 3 days later, and said the same thing. So that was March 24th. Here it is. March 31st, Katz says Israel will demolish Lebanon border villages, create Gaza-style buffer zone. Okay, so now let's go look at what this is beginning to look like. I have this in the Badlands news brief. So if you looked at the brief this morning, you would have probably already seen this. Okay, and StreamYard's telling me that I'm going to stop sharing because StreamYard's telling me that I've lost connection to the audio of my share screen. So I'm going to because I'll end up playing a video here in a minute at some point, and then y'all won't be able to hear the audio. What is happening there? And then it'll be a big cluster. It'll be yet another technical difficulty by Ghost. Here we go. Boom. All right, so I put a map in here. There it is. Okay, so before the map, here's the audio. Now, this is in Hebrew, so I'm going to read what Netanyahu is saying. But, before we look at that, because that has to do with Europe, we'll look at this. So here's the map that, as I understand it, is what we're looking at. So the bright white is Lebanon. You can see the red rectangle down here. This outline, the black outline, is Lebanon, right? Obviously, south of it is Israel. To the east of it is Syria. And so the current border, right, is this dark gray line that you can see. This blue line is the Litani River, and the Litani River is unique in that it does this 90-degree turn right here near the town of Taba, right? And so basically, this river is 20 miles from the border of Israel. You have the historic city of Tyre, right? Tyre, is it Tyre? Tyre? I think it's Tyre. Right there. And what Smotrich and Katz are saying is that this whole little square, this rectangle of land is going to become it's going to be a buffer zone that'll become part of Israel. And we all know what that means. That means that the Israelis are going to start building their little settler communities in no time. If you look at these red circles represent the scale of demolition between March 2nd and April 4th. It says up here at the top, IDF demolitions of multiple civilian buildings scaled by the number of events between March 2nd and April 4th. It does give a disclaimer down here. The demolitions of single houses is not included. So single family houses, which I imagine are probably more rural, right? Those are not included. They're only including multifamily, like apartment buildings that are being demolished by the IDF. And you can see the larger the circle, the more buildings have been demolished. So the largest circle that we're seeing is in Taba and in Khayyam, right? And Khayyam is beyond this region that has been described by Smotrich and Katz. A lot of these places, by the way, Taba in particular, are Christian villages. So these are Christian villages where the inhabitants are being driven out and their homes are being destroyed. And Hezbollah is stepping in and defending these villages as much as they can. But I guess the IDF is they're abandoning the villages, I'm sure, strategically. So what I see happening, and I'm prognosticating here. So what I speculate from at least a narrative standpoint, what will happen is we will see the IDF ultimately move up here and take Khayyam and move up and follow the Litani River and make the entire Litani River the new border with Lebanon, because by taking this area up here, that's a little more significant strategically. What they're doing is they're separating Lebanon from Syria, and that does two things. Number one, it cuts off Hezbollah from the goal, from Damascus, because ever since I'm sure it's been going on longer than that, but ever since the Syrian civil war started in 2012. Hezbollah has been going back and forth between Damascus and Lebanon, defending Assad from ISIS and Al Qaeda. And so this entire region here, right, north of the Golan Heights, has been, from IDF's perspective, infested with Hezbollah. And so if they take this land between Lebanon and Syria, they cut that in half. And they either divide the forces of Hezbollah, or they force them to into one side or the other. And then the other thing it achieves strategically is that it cuts off any potential land bridge between Hezbollah and Iran. Because the allegation against Assad was always that Assad allowed Syria to be a land bridge between Iran and Hezbollah. And so Iran was able to much more easily supply Hezbollah with munitions and other supplies through Syria. And that was the reason Assad had to go, is because once we overthrow Assad, then Hezbollah will be isolated, and then it'll be much easier to exterminate them. And then, of course, when they started the war with Hezbollah, once the war with Iran began back on February 28th, they learned that Hezbollah was still far more formidable than they anticipated. And so I think taking this area along the Litani River isolates Hezbollah further from their perspective and makes it easier to defeat them. And of course, from the greater Israel perspective, all of this land belongs to them anyway. So, everything even north of the Litani River, Beirut, all of it is going to become part of Israel at some point anyway. So, this is just the step-by-step process to get there. But that's what I expect narratively we're going to hear, is that northern part of that northeastern part of this map, as we're seeing it, which would be eastern Lebanon, is going to become, or I guess southeastern Lebanon, because it's down here in this little red rectangle, that's going to become part of this buffer zone at some point. Okay, let's do an ad break, because I'm not going to be able to go the full second hour, but we will get through plenty. So everyone stick around. This is the first hour, or the first half of the show in the books. We'll be back here in a minute.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets, as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, MyPillow mattresses and MyPillow mattress toppers, as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets, regular $69.98. Now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale only $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
In a quiet town at where beards grow wild and lips dare to crack without permission, one woman has suffered.
Hi, I'm Margie, and I'm Jadriet's mother.
But the world would come to know her by another name, Madame Margie, the moistureless.
Jay came home with a lip balm. It's called Soft Disclosure.
With one miraculous application, her power awakened.
Within one day, my lips were healed. It was miraculous.
But salvation came at a cost. For in the shadowed lands known only as Badlands,
You boys at Badlands are so handsome.
she saw potential.
You're covering up your beautiful faces.
And she made her demand.
Shave them all off.
Or face the consequences. Beard oil will not save you now.
And you'll look so much better.
This summer, moisturize wisely and guard your beard. Because Madame Margie, the moistureless, is always watching.
Badlanders, you are all familiar with Loaded Gun Coffee. They have been longtime supporters of Badlands, and you may have met them in person at GART. But did you know they are a veteran-ran, family-owned shop in Lake Havasu, Arizona? Every bag of their whole bean coffee delivers a high-octane Patriot punch of flavor. With a long family history of commitment to freedom, every bag is a testament of pride and honor, from the skilled farmers who cultivate each blend to their roasters that handpick the finest coffee beans from around the world. Loaded Gun Coffee has mastered their unique brewing methods, resulting in the best tasting coffee around. This coffee is smooth and delicious, the perfect way to start your mornings. Get over to badlandsmedia.tv/loaded and use promo code Badlands to get 10% off your order. If you are in the Lake Havasu area, stop in their newly renovated store and say hi. That is badlandsmedia.tv/loaded, promo code Badlands. Stay loaded with Loaded Gun Coffee. Ready to upgrade your daily routine with truly clean, natural products, no exceptions? Start in the kitchen with Van Man's Pure Cooking Tallow, perfect for high heat cooking and adding rich, clean flavor to your meals. For your daily cleanse, try their gentle tallow soaps, the classic honey, pine tar, or coconut. These bars deliver a rich, natural lather that leaves your skin feeling clean, soft, and refreshed. Give your smile real care with Miracle Tooth Powder in flavors like Mint Bone, Cinnabone, or Original. Customers rave about whiter, stronger teeth and fresher breath with no harsh chemicals. Van Man also offers great products like hair care, eye cream, and more, all made with clean, natural ingredients, no exceptions. Right now, enjoy free U.S. shipping on orders over $40. Head to badlandsmedia.tv/vanman today. That's badlandsmedia.tv/vanman today. All right, we are back for the second half of the show. It won't be as long as the first half because I have some stuff to do with my kids here. But we'll go as long as I'm able to. Okay, so let's get back to it. Where we left it was the Israel-Lebanese negotiations, and it looks like we didn't get a ton of progress here. It says that we did get this. So it says after meeting Lebanese, I played the video, but after meeting Lebanese, let me add this to the stage. There we go. After meeting Lebanese counterpart, Israeli envoy says sides united on ridding Hezbollah occupation. He said, quote, "We discovered today we're on the same side of the equation, and that's the most positive thing we could have come away with." Leiter tells reporters outside the State Department, "We are both united in liberating Lebanon from an occupation power dominated by Iran called Hezbollah." Leiter says the U.S. facilitated talks focused on crafting a long-term vision where there will be clearly delineated border between our countries and where the only reason we'll need to cross each other's territory will be in business suits to conduct business in bathing suits to go on vacation. Well, that sounds nice in theory. Says the Israeli envoy hails the Lebanese government for bucking Hezbollah's calls to put out of today's historic talks, the most senior level engagement ever held by the two countries. Quote, "This is the beginning of a very strong, fortified, and consistent battle against Hezbollah." Asked what he heard from his Lebanese counterpart, Nada Hamada, that has him so optimistic. Beirut will actually be able to disarm Hezbollah. Leiter responds, "They expressed a strong will to this time disarm Hezbollah." The Lebanese government made it very clear that they will no longer be occupied by Hezbollah. Yeah, well, I think as Americans, we all understand the concept of disarming a population. I don't think we're very comfortable with that, nor should we be. So if the people of Lebanon want to disarm Hezbollah, let them do it. I think the idea that you're going to, from the top down, the government's going to go door to door and do it, good luck with that. My understanding, according to Trump's friend, Tom Barrack, his envoy to Syria and ambassador to Turkey, he said that it's not uncommon for people in that region to just own like 50 caliber machine guns. So good luck. Okay, so before I get to Maloney, which I've been teasing this whole time, I wanted to just go to Dmitriev, Kirill Dmitriev. So first we have this story. Oil gas prices could rise by 100% and 200% in prolonged war with Iran, according to the IMF. It says the International Monetary Fund has outlined 3 scenarios for further global economic developments, taking into account the war involving the United States, Israel, and Iran. The International Monetary Fund forecasts that oil and gas prices could rise by 100% and 200% respectively in 2026 and 2027 if the U.S.-Israeli operation against Iran is prolonged and leads to the most severe economic consequences, according to its latest World Economic Outlook report. As specified in the document, the fund has outlined 3 scenarios for further global economic developments, taking into account the war involving the U.S., Israel, and Iran. The first and most optimistic scenario assumes that the war will be limited in duration, intensity, and scale, with its negative economic consequences largely dissipating by mid-year. The 2 other scenarios assume that the conflict lasts longer or expands. Under the most adverse scenario, the shock to commodity prices is more severe and persistent, with oil prices rising by 100% starting from Q2 of 2026. That would be April to June, compared to the baseline established in the January World Economic Outlook, and remaining at that level in 2027 before dissipating in 2028, the report states. In this case, the average oil price will amount to about $110 per barrel this year and approximately $125 next year, IMF experts estimate. At the same time, they note that gas prices for Europe and Asia would increase by 200% over the same period. Under the adverse scenario, oil prices are projected to rise by 80% starting from the second quarter of 2026 compared to the baseline set in the January World Economic Outlook, before declining to around 20% above the baseline in 2027 and dissipating in 2028. The fund's analysts believe. In this case, they specify the average oil price would be about $100 per barrel this year and approximately $75 per barrel next year. Meanwhile, under this scenario, gas prices for Europe and Asia would rise by 160% in the Q2 compared to the baseline, before largely declining in 2027. Finally, under the favorable scenario, energy prices are expected to increase by 19% in 2026, with oil prices specifically rising by 21.4%, according to the IMF. In this case, oil prices would amount to $82 per barrel this year and $75 per barrel next year, the authors estimated. Okay, yeah. So again, whenever these globalist rags put out this stuff, I largely dismiss a lot of their analysis because it's either performed by vaccinated people or it's totally disregarding Trump's golden age plan. Let's see what the U.S. economy looks like in 6 months, because I think 6 months from now, we're going to be looking at something very different in terms of the manufacturing that is turned on, the jobs that are coming out that aren't, quote unquote, white collar, computer desk jobs, but, jobs where you're welding, jobs where you're making things, which is the manufacturing based economy, which is the economy that built America in the first place. I think we're going to see a resurgence of that. And I think you're going to see people leaving office jobs and going to get a job in that sector just because they're going to pay so well, with trillions of dollars being invested in those industries from both inside and outside the United States. So the reason I laid all that out is because then we get this really interesting statement from our boy Kirill Dmitriev, the special envoy to the economic envoy to the United States. He is Scott Bessent's counterpart. He's Scott Bessent. He's the Scott Bessent of Russia. Oil prices artificially kept below, quote unquote, psychological limit, according to Dmitriev. The Russian special presidential envoy made his comment on the post from global markets investor that oil prices are growing dramatically despite the dip in the futures, highlighting the market strain and continuing energy crisis. Special envoy of the Russian president and chief executive of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, Kirill Dmitriev, believes that oil prices are artificially kept below the psychological limit of $100 per barrel. Quote, who might be powerful, motivated, and well-financed to keep selling oil futures to hold them artificially under the psychological limit of $100 a barrel as the spread from physical oil increases to over $30 to $40. Or maybe this is just Adam Smith's invisible hand of the market, he wrote on X. Dmitriev made his comment on the post from global markets investor that oil prices are growing dramatically despite the dip in the futures, highlighting the market strain and the continuing energy crisis. So the futures market seems to be pretty optimistic that we're going to see the price of oil go down. And yet the oil prices are growing right now. So he's suggesting that there's some manipulation that's happening, and that's probably always been the case. Okay. Now we can finally pivot to our girl, Meloni. Let's see. I had that clip pulled up. Okay, let's do a little bit of background first. Italy's Meloni issues rare criticism of Trump after his attack on the Pope. This is from yesterday. U.S. President Donald Trump's attack on Pope Leo was unacceptable, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said on Monday, joining forces with politicians of all colors in springing to the pontiff's defense. The statement represented an extremely rare public rebuke of Trump from Meloni, who has cultivated particularly close ties with the U.S. president, underscoring widespread anger in Italy over his broadside on Pope Leo. Trump set off the furor by calling Leo terrible in a long tirade on Sunday. He subsequently posted an AI image depicting himself as a Jesus-like figure, sparking further outrage among Christians who saw the image as blasphemous. Pope Leo, leader of the world's 1.2 billion Catholics, swiftly responded, telling reporters he had no fear of the Trump administration and promising to continue speaking out against the U.S.-led war with Iran and in defense of migrants. Maloney issued an initial statement backing Leo as he flew off on an ambitious four-nation visit to Africa, but made no specific mention of Trump's broadside. Opposition politicians accused her of lacking the courage to directly challenge Trump, prompting her to issue a second statement later in the day to clarify her position. Quote, I find President Trump's words towards the Holy Father unacceptable. The Pope is the head of the Catholic Church, and it is right and normal for him to call for peace and to condemn every form of war, she said. Maloney was the only European leader to attend Trump's inauguration in 2025, and she had hoped their friendship would boost her standing at home and abroad. However, Trump risks becoming a liability, with 66% of Italians having a negative view of the U.S. leader. Pollsters say Maloney's ties to the White House might have been a factor in her defeat last month in a referendum on judicial reform. Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini, who has also in the past associated himself closely with Trump, also distanced himself from the U.S. leader on Monday, highlighting how Europe's far right is trying to draw back from the MAGA orbit. Quote, Pope Leo is a spiritual leader for billions of Catholics, but beyond that, if there is one person striving for peace, it is Pope Leo, and so attacking him does not seem either wise or helpful, he said in a statement. The Pope is the Bishop of Rome and spiritual leader to millions of Italian Catholics, making politicians of all stripes wary about taking him on. Quote, it has been centuries since such a blatant act of aggression against the Roman pontiff was seen, since said former center-left Prime Minister Matteo Renzi, adding that it was vital for Catholics and non-believers alike to defend Leo. He is, after all, a builder of bridges, unlike Trump, a destroyer of relationships and civilization. The only advantage is this: Trump's come and go, but the popes remain, he said. So yeah, that's all of this is leading up to let's see. Let's watch this video. This is from April 17th, 2025. And let's take a look.
Georgia Maloney, who you see the two of them there, they have had pretty friendly relations up until this moment in time. He said, she had said that his attacks on the Pope were unacceptable. President Trump responded to that, saying it's her who's unacceptable because she doesn't care if Iran has a nuclear weapon and would blow up Italy in 2 minutes if they had a chance. Took a shot at the Italian Prime Minister.
Okay, and then here's the article. Trump turns on Maloney, says he is shocked by Italian leader. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni lacks courage and has let Washington down, U.S. President Donald Trump told an Italian newspaper on Tuesday, delivering a blunt public rebuke to one of his closest European allies. Meloni has been a vociferous supporter of Trump, but distanced herself from him after he went to war with Iran in February. And on Monday, she openly criticized him for lashing out at the Pope. We don't need to reread all of her comments. But I wanted to see her comments from last month. Here it is. Trump's criticism marked a dramatic change in tone toward Maloney, the only European leader to attend his inauguration, just 1 month ago, and whom he had hailed as a great leader just 1 month ago. So he said that about her. On Tuesday, he accused her of failing to back the U.S. efforts to tackle Iran's nuclear program and guarantee energy flows through the Gulf, saying she wanted America to do the job for her. Asked about her combination of his comments on Pope Leo, he said she is the one who is unacceptable because she does not care whether Iran has a nuclear weapon and would blow up Italy in 2 minutes if it had the chance, which I don't think that's true. And I don't think Trump thinks that's true either. Trump said the surge in energy prices should have encouraged Italy, which is heavily dependent on oil and gas imports, to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Quote, they pay the highest energy costs in the world and are not even ready to fight for the Strait of Hormuz. They depend on Donald Trump to keep it open. Yeah, and I saw that I think Trump put a truth post out about this. Let me pull that up. He's doing a bunch of endorsements here. Let me scroll through all the endorsements. Stand by for processing. Here it is. All right. So from 4 hours ago, he says Europe is desperate for energy, and yet the United Kingdom refuses to open the North Sea oil, one of the greatest fields in the world. Tragic. Aberdeen should be booming. Norway sells its North Sea oil to the UK at double the price. They are making a fortune. The UK, which is better situated on the North Sea for purposes of energy than Norway, should drill, baby, drill. It is absolutely crazy that they don't, and no more windmills. President DJT. So yeah, look, the less discerning people in MAGA are going to look at the situation and they're going to say, well, obviously Giorgia Meloni is the enemy. She's the bad guy. We need to start hating her now, right? Like our 2 minutes of hate now need to be directed at her every day. That's not the way I see it. I see this as, again, like a WrestleMania, Trumpomania soap opera where some of the people he's fighting with, I think it's an earnest conflict. And then some of the people that I think he's going back and forth with, it's a little more controlled. We have to remember that Matteo Salvini, who had mentioned the deputy prime minister under Giorgia Meloni, in 2017, he ran a campaign that was identical to Trump's campaign in 2016. He even used the same branding. He used the same like templates for his, like yard signs and banners. I mean, it looked like a MAGA flag, like a MAGA yard sign, except it said Salvini in it. He basically copy pasted the MAGA campaign rhetoric and strategy in Italy. And that political party that he created to run that campaign, we learned later, was financed by I think it was Rostova. Let me see. Let me pull this up real quick. It was the Russian energy company that is Russian energy company funding Matteo Salvini, because then he was placed under investigation, and they tried to keep him out of office. Here it is. This is from July 2019. Italian prosecutors investigate league over alleged Russian oil deal claims. And it is behind a paywall because, of course, it is. All vaccinated media is always behind a paywall. Let's look at Fortune magazine. Maybe they'll give us. Nope, they're behind a paywall too. Well, anyway, I'm gonna work on finding that. But this is the same company that's going around building nuclear facilities everywhere, like all these different countries, in Africa, in the Middle East, even in Asia, and I believe South America as well. Does it actually list the company? Yeah, this is just such nonsense. I remember reading through all this a while back. It's not Gazprom. Well, anyway, I think it's Rostov, if I'm saying that right. But anyway, they funded, so like the same group that's going around building nuclear power plants in places like Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, they're also funding this guy's campaign back in 2017. And then that Matteo Salvini, who basically is, he gets like a Russia dossier kind of attack against him, ends up having to run second fiddle to Giorgia Meloni, who was aligned with him politically. And so she becomes prime minister, and he then ends up becoming deputy prime minister. And now these two characters who have been very close to Trump, right under his wing, are, engaged now in this. I think it's kayfabe with Trump. But remember, the end goal here, the goal is to break up NATO. And if we're going to break up NATO, that means that Europe has to view Trump as a problem and view America as a problem. So do I think it's a bad thing that they're doing this to Trump right now? No, not really. The fact that Viktor Orban is out of office now, he was a Trump guy, right? So Peter Magyar may be way more sympathetic to the idea that NATO is a problem and that a new security alliance needs to be formed that maybe doesn't include Canada and the United States, or maybe it just doesn't include the United States. And that will allow Europe to kind of make its own decisions and not be so dependent on NATO or the US. Perhaps we see that coming. As long as we get out of NATO, I don't really care what Europe does. Europe can do whatever it wants. But as Trump said, the incentive has now been created for the UK to drill in the North Sea and start creating their own oil industry. But that's a steep uphill battle because they are such vaccinated leftists in Europe, as we all know. Okay, and then the last place that I wanted to go was I want to look at North Korea, because North Korea, there was a great post by Kim Jong-un. All right, stand by for processing. We have actually, before I do North Korea, I meant to play this video earlier when I was looking at the Badlands news brief. I just saw it on my timeline. All right, so that's not the video that has the subtitles. So we'll go back to the news brief. Okay, so this video from Netanyahu. So it's in Hebrew, so I'll just read what he's saying. He says he's lashing out at like Sanchez and these European leaders who don't want to support Israel and their continued war with Lebanon. And he says, we are protecting Europe. Europe, which has forgotten so many things since the Holocaust, it can learn a lot from us, especially the most important thing, the sharp distinction between good and evil, which requires, in moments of truth, going to war for the sake of good, for the sake of life, which vowed after World War II to protect what is good, is now afflicted with a deep moral weakness. Europe is losing control over its identity, its values, and its commitment to safeguard civilization from barbarism. But Israel does not forget this eternal commitment. So you're seeing like the break, right? Like this is the split. This is like speaking of fracturing, the fracturing between Israel and really the rest of the West. I think he's going to split with Europe first, right? Maybe a few countries will stand by his side, but I think he's going to split with Europe first. And then I think he ends up splitting with the US at some point. And here is a clear indication of that, I think it's a clear indication, but others may disagree. So again, from Times of Israel, Trump says Iran talks may renew again, right? Thursday, potentially, maybe early next week. And then the Mossad chief, David Barnea, our mission isn't over until the regime falls. So U.S. president gives contradictory accounts about speed of progress in negotiations. Barnea says Israel always planned to continue the campaign for regime change even after strikes end. Okay, so I'm not going to read the part. It says U.S. President Donald Trump said on Tuesday that talks with Iran could resume in Pakistan. We've read that enough, but I want to get to Barnea's comments. So he told the newspaper that Pakistan's Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir was doing a great job in the talks. He's fantastic, and therefore it's more likely that we go back there, Trump said. Less than an hour earlier, however, Trump had given the Post a more pessimistic estimation, telling it that talks with Iran were progressing slowly and that if a meeting were to happen, it would likely not be in Pakistan. Quote, things are happening, but a little bit slow. I don't think it'll be in Pakistan that we have our meeting, he said. We'll probably go to another location. We have another location in mind. So here is an example of within 1 hour, speaking to two different outlets, Trump is contradicting himself. And I think he does this on purpose, right? Because it confuses the shit out of the enemy. And I think when Trump is making public commentary, MAGA is too quick to assume that he's speaking to us, that he's basically telling us what to think and how to think. And here's the problem with that mentality, like just adopting whatever Trump happens to be saying at the moment, because you end up like a dog chasing cars in traffic, because he's always contradicting himself. If you stick to first principles and you just stick by what what aligns with your principles as opposed to what Trump is telling you to think, you start to understand that when he's communicating a lot of the time, he's actually communicating to other groups or he's communicating to the enemy directly, right? And he's trying to get the enemy off kilter. And so that's why when Trump says something that I may disagree with personally, I don't take it personally and I don't get upset about, what it might mean as far as like my loyalty to Trump or my loyalty to MAGA or whatever. Like that's not in question. Okay. And so here's David Barnea clearly saying that we always continue the war against Iran. And I think there was other comments I saw that like, as long as there are missiles flying into Israel, we're going to continue to fight Iran. Well, the missiles are flying into Israel, not only from Iran, but from Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is going to keep firing missiles into Israel as long as the IDF is pushing north toward the Litani River. So think about that. The IDF continues fighting in Lebanon even while we're in a ceasefire with Iran. Hezbollah is firing missiles into Israel as we speak, and that is whetting the appetite of the Israeli security apparatus to continue fighting Iran as soon as the ceasefire ends, right? And so I think all of the circumstances are being laid out for at some point, whether it happens in the next week or, we get another extension of the ceasefire and these negotiations drag on for a few more weeks or a few more months or whatever. At some point, I think we're going to see the U.S. break away and they're going to say, all right, like here's a peace deal. We're done, signed, sealed, delivered with Iran. And then you will see Israel, because they've been fighting Hezbollah this whole time and they view Hezbollah as an extension of Iran, they're going to say, like we're not done. We got to keep fighting. And that's where I think little brother's going to get his ass kicked on the playground. By the way, did you notice that Trump's been using that? I mean, I'm not taking credit for that. Like that's not like I think a unique perspective, but I have noticed that Trump, I think, put out the big brother, little brother. I think I have that clip. Yeah, here it is. This is from Sunday.
And as Bibi Netanyahu said, we're the big brother and they're the small brother, and it's been a very effective team.
Yeah, so sometimes the big brother needs to let the little brother figure the world out on his own, and that might mean taking a few lumps as you learn your place. So that's what I think we're going to see happen. All right, so we're going to land it today with this video from Kim Jong-un that I saw put out. And I will be heartbroken if this turns out to be AI, but I haven't seen any indication that it is. So all right. So obviously this is in, I assume, Korean, right? So we can understand that, but you can see, this is a very Western presentation. I mean, the way I look at this is a very Western presentation. The architecture in the background has a lot of classical elements, like classical Western elements in the architecture, right? The symmetry, the arch in the middle, maybe that's an influence on Korean architecture. I don't know, but you can see like this, the way this mantle is designed. I mean, that's all classical Greek and Roman influence. And then of course the Chesterfield armchair, the Chesterfield couch, he's wearing a Western suit with a tie. Like that is absolutely a Western, outfit that he's wearing. And remember, he didn't dress like this before. He dressed like the Hillary Clinton pantsuit, right? And then after him and Trump shook hands in Shanghai, I think wasn't it Shanghai or Singapore 2018. We started seeing him wearing Western suits, and then he dropped a bunch of weight. I think he was looking a little trim, and then Biden won. I think he started stress eating or something because his weight came back, and then he still wore suits, but every now and again he put on the Hillary Clinton pantsuit and fire a few missiles into the water, and maybe he was just missing Trump and wanted them to come back. But Yeah, I mean, Kim Jong-un is presenting himself right here, in my opinion, as a Western, like a quote unquote Western leader, or at least signaling to people paying attention that he is aligned with the West. And so here's what the statement says. It says, I am always ready to sit down with the U.S. president at any time to make efforts for a mediation with Iran to produce an outcome that the international community would welcome. Peace in the world is our major goal. The world has had enough of the instability. Now that North Korea and South Korea are on a path of peace and prosperity, I would like joint military operations with South Korea and other nations. And I will not allow deployment of weapons of other nations in our vicinity. So he's basically saying, I'm willing to team up with South Korea. I mean, we're going to see the unification of Korea is coming for sure. But I think this is a signal to the deep state that, like, if you try to start this war with Taiwan, like Taiwan and China, like, don't do it. Like, we're like, South Korea is on our team now. That's the big U.S. ally in the region, is South Korea, along with Japan, but mostly South Korea. And he's saying South Korea is on our team now, and I'm willing to work with them. And you know that Kim Jong-un and China are on the same team. So this is the white pill. I see this as a huge white pill. And as I said on Daily this morning, I mean, the best character arc in this whole storyline, this whole grand story, is that of Kim Jong-un. So I definitely want to see him complete that character arc. All right. I think I need to land it there because my kids are going to be here in the next 5 to 10 minutes, and we got to hit the road to get them to tennis lessons. So let me see if we have any boosts or rants. I don't think I've read boosts in a few weeks, so let me go but check on that going back a few weeks. Hit the thumbs up if you find any value in any of the things I say, or don't. That's cool too. Thanks for stopping by. Share the show, even if it's to ridicule my takes. That's fine too. Okay, let's see. March 27th, Eleanor 2000. I think I probably have already read this, but I'm going to read it again because Eleanor, love seeing you at GART and meeting your husband. $50. Thank you always. We appreciate your knowledge in geopolitical digs. I just learned of Dan Bermawi. Dan Bermawi, former Muslim. Are you familiar with his book, Islam, Israel, and the West? He published the Re-Zionization of the West on X. On X. Okay. No, this is a new rant. I don't think I've read this rant before. I have not heard of that, but I will definitely check that out, Eleanor. Thank you for the boost. Patriot Francois, am I saying that right? $10, dear Ghost. Thank you for sharing your work with us. I was born and live in France because my country of origin, Iran, was stormed by the same deep state who is destroying my country of heart, France, but I trust President Trump to save both. Yeah, and just to be clear, the idea that missiles are actually hitting Iran and taking out key targets, I'm fully on board with, like, that being a possibility. I just don't think that there's a conflict that's as expansive and as large as the one that Donald Trump has described to us from the podium when he's doing, like, his WrestleMania promotions. And I was joking around with the Rise of Tire folks at GART, like, we need to create an AI video of Macho Man Randy Savage reading all of Trump's, like, Truth Social posts, and then, like, the Iron Sheik or Hulk Hogan reading all of the like, Iranian, like, shit posts that they've been posting in response. I think that would clearly illustrate, like, that would make it, and do it like in a WrestleMania style promotion. I think that would clearly illustrate, like, my take on it, the way that I see it, and why I laugh so hard when they put some of this stuff out. Mrs. Love, $40. Great info and analysis. Always looking forward to Ghost Show. God bless you all at Badlands. Well, thank you for that, Mrs. Love. Yeah, so I guess it has been a few weeks since I've read these, so thank you so much for that. And let's see if we've covered everything in the chat. I think we might be good. Oh, wait, we got Rave Daddy 523. It was so great to meet you at GART. You are a genius with history and being able to see behind the veil of lies that they have fed us. Thank you for all that you do. Rave Daddy, it was great meeting you as well, man. Appreciate the kind words and for coming to GART. The weekend was definitely fun. Genius is probably a stretch, but it's fun to look at this stuff and pick it apart. So I think that's about it. All right, guys, hit the thumbs up, share the show, and be based. And we will see you. So tomorrow, Matt texted me this morning, and he's got to fly to Sweden tonight, or maybe tomorrow morning. So he's gonna be traveling. So we're going to not do Breaking History tomorrow. However, I am going to be on tomorrow night with Jim Quast on Space Revolution, and the title of the show that he came up with, he and I came up with. I'm going to credit him with it. Is Geospatial Politics. That's the title. And I think that's a term that he has coined. In my mind, he's coined it, and that will be, I think, how we refer to politics in space. So Geospatial Politics tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Badlands Media. See y'all there. And I should have been paying attention and starting the music while I was saying all that.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.